What is up, all of you beautiful nerds from around the world? This is another edition of Fan Chats Live here on the Den of Nerds. I'm joined with executive producer Al Schuler. Al, how you doing, man?
Not bad, not bad. What's going on, people? How's it going?
And guys, we have some Star Wars stuff to talk about today. The title, you see it in the thumbnail, you see it in the title. The real topic at hand here is Mr. JJ Abrams and the changes that we think he will be making to
hmm
Star Wars Episode 9. We're going to get into all of it, okay? There's been a rumor that's recently come out about Rey's parentage. This thing made the rounds on the internet, got everybody talking, and then was eventually squashed. Anyways, we're going to get into that. But I want to know, as people come into the chat, before we get into the topics, I want to know, guys, let me know, what do you think Mr. JJ Abrams is going to change when it comes to Star Wars Episode 9? And most importantly, do you want him to remove Reylo from Star Wars Episode 9? So let's, as people answer that, just in general, how are you feeling about Star Wars as of late, Al?
I'm still excited, man. I'm pumped for episode 9, but man, I've got questions. I've got concerns, but Star Wars is still it for me, man. They haven't totally wrecked the Titanic for me yet, bro.
Right. Well, we talked, it's funny, we talked about yesterday, and we had a pretty good
hmm
conversation about it. And the tone that I think I would describe yesterday was a little bit frustrated from both of us.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah,
I think,
definitely that.
yeah, I think we were both a little bit frustrated with what's going on right now with Star Wars and with Lucasfilm. One of the things that you and I talked about was the Vanity Fair spread. The Vanity Fair spread is a tradition. It's very traditional when it comes to Star Wars. It's a cool thing. Annie Leibovitz, she does these crazy good photos. It's a big deal.
hmm
And yet the vibes and the way that landed with people online was a little bit strange. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely that. I mean, you would have, I guess the expectation would have been for there to be a lot more kind of pomp and circumstance behind it,
Right.
a little more hype, but it really seemed like it fell flat with the audience, though. It didn't seem like fans are really that pumped about it.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of, like I said, it kind of seemed to fall flat. It was a weird thing. I thought it would be trending for longer. I thought people would be more excited about it. And I think that one of the things that we discussed yesterday that's just kind of frustrating a little bit about in general Star Wars where they're at right now is that they really don't seem to get what is going on the internet. How these different fan
Yeah,
bases are disseminating information, how these different groups of people are reacting to things that are going on in Star Wars, right?
right, right, right.
So that's sort of a frustrating thing. So let's get right into we got a healthy amount of people in here. Let's get right into the first topic of the day, which is of course the Rey as Han Solo's daughter rumor when it came out. It came out a couple of days ago. I didn't even cover it because I was like pretty sure that it was going to get debunked relatively quickly. And then
Mhm.
it did end up getting debunked. But what was your perception of how that went down and how people reacted to it when it came out?
Yeah, it was to me. It was just like from what I saw, all the reaction was like that would have been a really lame way for it to go. I personally would not have wanted to see that go down. I'm not a fan of that idea, that theory, and it didn't seem like the fandom was really behind it either. It really looks like if they went that route, it's like they totally were kind of copping out on what the original plan might have been.
Right. Exactly. And that's, I mean, I think that's where, we're going to end up taking this conversation rather quickly. But yeah, it was interesting to me to watch people react to it. There's a lot of people that actually bought it. There's a lot of people that just, not only did they buy it, but they were like into it. You know what I mean? Which I thought was interesting.
hmm
I think sometimes studios put stuff out like that out, like little feelers out there, and they're trying to
hmm
see how people are gonna react. How do different fan bases feel about that? Are they into it? Are they not? I think they got maybe some mixed messages with the whole Han Solo thing, but I don't think they got as much negativity as I thought they would.
Right. No, I agree with that. It wasn't like the backlash was crazy, but definitely it didn't from what I was seeing, people didn't seem like they were too thrilled about it.
Right.
But you're right though. There was kind of this weird intrigue behind it, almost kind of like, well, that would be a nice turn, but like I said, me personally, I was just like, no, let's not go that way. Please let's not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So okay, so let's get it right into Raylo, and I want to say a couple of things because I know we're probably going to have a lot of Raylos in the chat. In fact, let's just if if you're in the chat and you're a supporter of Raylo, could you give us a little like a sign maybe? Are you pro Raylo? You know what I mean? Let us know in the chat. I just want to get a metric for how many people are uh, into that in here because I have a couple of things that I want to say, Al, about Raylo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um,
Let's hear it.
so looks like there's at least a couple Raylos in here. Yes. So no, no. Oh, there's some no's. There's some antis. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit of a story. We're gonna go to story time for a second here, Al. Um, all the way back to when The Last Jedi came out. I did a video that day. Okay, the day that it came out, and the video was about Raylo. Okay, now at the time, I had just gone. I was doing these things called the Last Jedi live streams. I was doing them with James Rosile. We were literally going over
Mm-hmm.
every kind of theory, every single theory for the Last Jedi that there was. The last one we did was the Raylo theory. Now, in my research for that theory, I was blown away. I was blown away because there's so much evidence, there's so much to suggest that that Kylo Ren and Rey, as having a romantic connection, was interwoven into those movies. That it was actually pretty masterfully set up. The reason that I thought it
Yeah.
was the reason
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was so interesting is because I was one of those people that didn't see it at all in The Force Awakens at all. To this day, when I watch The Force Awakens, I still kind of don't really see it. You know, people say that it's there. Now, upon checking out the evidence and stuff, you're like, okay, I can see how they were hinting at it. Now, when I saw The Last Jedi and I did the video, I was convinced. I was like, holy crap, this is exactly what they're going for. This is what they're going to do, right? And now that
Mm-hmm. Right.
video that I did that day blew up because a lot of people were searching for it after the movie or whatever. And for a while, every video that I did that was about Reylo or about Rey and Kylo Ren's connection was blowing up. And at one time, I was
Mm-hmm.
probably like 2 or 3 videos away from literally becoming a Reylo channel because of how the YouTube algorithm works. It was basically like, dude, you love or you're doing this, people like it, we like you doing that, keep doing that, right?
Right. Right.
Now, fast forward to now, and I don't even necessarily consider myself a Reylo shipper because the more and more that I like look at that community, and you can't like obviously generalize and speak about everybody that's in a community, but the more I look at that, the more I see a lot of disconnect between the things that I like about the romantic tension that these two characters have, a lot of difference between the way I view the two characters and how their story will end and the way that the Reylo community views it, right? So like I
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be a happy ending. I don't think I highly doubt there would even be an embrace, like an actual embrace, like a sort of solidifying of their romance. I almost don't even think you're going
Right.
to get that. And I don't think you need it, by the way. I don't think you need it. The tension is enough. Like the underlining tension and this attraction that they have to for each other is enough for me. I like it. I think it's mysterious. The dark side, the light side. You know what I mean? Like I like it. But
Mm-hmm.
but then like the word Reylo and the Reylo community like took on a whole new meaning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it did.
Which
Yeah,
is
it did.
which is kind of not. It doesn't represent the things that I like about it. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No,
Um,
totally get it.
so there's my diatribe about Raylo. Now, having said that, it is to me so obvious that this was something that they were actually setting it up. It was so obvious that they are setting this up. So the question is, Al, can what are they going to do about this connection in this next movie? Because they cannot downplay it or ignore it. It's already been set up as like their plot, right? So
Right.
they can't just like, ideally, maybe if they hadn't put so much focus on it, they could just let it linger, not explain it, not like, do anything with it, and then nobody really gets pissed, right? Like everybody can still see it if they want to see it, not see it if they don't want to see it. But it kind of feels like they're heading in a direction that's not even an option. So what do you think they're going to do with this connection that they've established?
I really think if they're smart and if I think what they should do and what they're gonna do might be two different things at this point, and that
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
kind of back to me being concerned and worried because I feel like what they should do is see that story, that original storyline, and that plot thread through to its conclusion. Um, I agree with you. I definitely see or can see now, kind of looking back at it in hindsight. I saw some of the hints of the connection in The Force Awakens. I think it's like almost hitting you over the head, obvious in The Last Jedi.
yeah,
And so for them to then totally disregard it would, I think, be kind of the worst move they could make.
yeah,
I think kind of one B to that would be to turn around and make them related and kind of totally negate the romantic aspect of it. I think that would totally derail the entire plot and kind of really for me the tone of the entire series to date, or the sequel trilogy at least anyway,
right.
because it kind of totally undermines all of the hints that they've laid out there, from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, with regard to that the whole love hate thing and saving what you love as opposed to fighting what you hate and or destroying what you hate, and that whole thing. It's like the undertones are there for two movies, and then for you to move away from that, I really hope they don't. And in terms of what I think they might do, if any of the new kind of marketing and the buzz is any indication, they might be looking to backpedal and go like all in on Palpatine, man.
Yeah.
It might it might totally just 180 that whole situation.
And this is kind of, I mean, we're sort of retracing a lot of the things that we talked about last night, but I think that at the end of the day, we get the feel like we think that they have to see it through if they're smart. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the only reason that they wouldn't do it is because they truly believe that doing it or going that way would be really poorly received. And so they would have to have a lot of indications out there from the fan base and from different, like, here's the thing. Like, I just think that if they're panicking and they think that if they actually do this romance thing, this Disney princess thing, all of the bad connotations that come with it, Twilight and Star Wars, all the things that people say about it, are they reading the room and saying, if we do this, people are going to freak out, therefore we have to change this? Is this like a JJ retcon thing? Can you see him making that kind of a decision?
I can, simply because of the state of where Star Wars is right now.
Right.
Um, I, I, there was a point in time, if you'd asked me that question before Solo, maybe right after the Last Jedi, if you had asked me that question, then I would have said no way. As divisive and as controversial amongst the fan base as the Last Jedi was, I would have said at that point still, no, I don't see them. I don't see JJ retconning that. And given all of the backlash that Star Wars has gotten post Solo and kind of the whole, anti Star Wars movement and that whole thing, I could see a scenario now in which Disney Lucasfilm totally hit the panic button and decided that they were so afraid of the Reylo backlash that they had to totally do away with that storyline, and they just totally dismiss it. I
Yeah.
can see that as a possibility now.
Yes. I mean, I think this is what it's almost it's so weird to say that because it's tough. Like almost, I've talked to a lot of different people about a lot of different aspects of Star Wars, and even the video that we did when we went around and interviewed people. One of the most interesting things
Hmm.
about that video was that there's a lot of people just simply not down for Rey and Kylo having romantic connection at all. Like there's
Yeah.
it seemed to be the majority of people that were like no. And many of them were like, I
Hmm.
think they're related. You know what I mean? Like those one guys that were the pilots, they were like they were all convinced that they were related. A lot of
Right.
people are like they don't necessarily think they're related, but they don't think there's a romance. They're like, yeah, there it's a connection, but no. It's interesting. I would love to know someday like the real story of like what the conversations that they are having right now about this. Now, let's shift
Right.
into another thing that we talked about. And the reality of the situation is if they do this, if JJ changes it, because the let me just tell you the train of thought that I'm on, right? I think
Hmm.
the connection is too obvious at this point, and they cannot just simply not have the connection play a major role. And so JJ knows this, and so he literally said in the Vanity Fair thing that their connection is, what did he say, deeper than anyone could have imagined, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So he says that. Now, the reason he says that is because they simply cannot ignore it at this point. It has to be an element of the plot. The only way to make it that, to have it be that deep connection, it's something you never imagined, and not have it play out as a romance, I think, is to make them related, right? And so, as
Right.
as weird as it seems, as crazy as it seems to me, I can see JJ and I can see all of them being like, okay, look, what if we make them related? Cousins is probably what I'm thinking because I think them being brother and sister is just ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I can see them doing the related thing. Now, if they do that, I think it's a massive mistake. I think it'll be a massive, massive mistake because this would be them doing what they get blamed or accused of. They get blamed and accused of having no plan, and they get blamed and
Hmm.
accused of just sort of throwing a bunch of fan service at the wall. Particularly when it comes to
Right.
this movie right here and Palpatine. One of the things and one of the points
Right.
that I tried to lay out in my coverage of this of Star Wars Episode 9 that you just simply can't deny is that the attitude of the marketing is we're taking away Star Wars movies. There's not going to be any more for 3 years, and then you're only getting three. This is the last one of this 40-year tradition thing. Emperor Palpatine's back. Lando's back. Luke Skywalker's going to be in it. Princess Leia's going to be in it. Maybe even Han Solo. There's rumors of Han Solo being in it. Are you really going to skip this movie? Is basically the marketing ploy. They're throwing so much stuff at it that it's like
Hmm.
they're basically just trying to leverage as much as they humanly possibly can for people to go see this movie. And if they abandon what, in my opinion, is one of the only actual story things that they did have in mind, that they did have planned, that they told all their writers and directors to do, then they will become the thing that people are accusing them of being. Then the trilogy will lose a lot of integrity. It will just
Right.
it will
I
feel
agree.
even more jumbled together than it already is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely, definitely, and that's kind of where I think I could still see even in the wild as wild as it sounds, I still could see a possibility or a scenario in which they did that, and the reason being is just because when you look at kind of where they are where Star Wars is, and we talked about this kind of a little bit last night too, where you look at Star Wars and you kind of juxtapose that franchise against Marvel,
Right.
and you look at kind of some of the limitations that Star Wars has as opposed to the MCU. They're writing stories based on George Lucas's already defined characters, already defined kind of plot, and motivations and things like that. So they're kind of having to extend that story because of that. And whereas the MCU are just taking characters and they're taking certain stories or certain events and adapting them to screenplay with their own interpretation. So it gives them more leeway. But where Star Wars is, kind of going left, and what I'm afraid of is a huge course correction where, because of the fact that they're so off base or so out of touch with what the fans want, that they give us this fan servicey movie and they totally disregard Reylo, or they make them they make the connection something, you know, possibly along the lines of related, but even something even deep more obscure than that. And it ends up, just like you said, totally ruining the integrity of the movie, simply because they were under the impression that they were giving fans what they thought they wanted.
Correct.
And so that, in that scenario, I can kind of see them doing it. But I totally get, where you're coming from in saying they almost have to see it through, because you're absolutely right. I mean, you can't ignore it in The Last Jedi. It is definitely there. So for you to have those beats from that story and leave it on the note that you left it on with The Last Jedi, kind of leaving that up to, episode 9 and JJ to kind of conclude, and then for them to kind of brush that aside as an afterthought, dude, that would almost put the nail in the coffin for Star Wars, I think, man.
Yeah, and it's like it's so tough. Like we try, I think we even said this yesterday. It's like we don't want to get super negative on things, and I really don't want to get negative about things. But
Right.
it's really hard to look at the current situation, and particularly just honestly, the sins of Lucasfilm are sins of omission, mostly over the past couple
Mm-hmm.
of years. The way they have not chimed in on things, the way they have not just come out and said things. There's a lot of sins
Mm-hmm.
of omission, and they've allowed. One of the things that I really get frustrated is they've allowed a lot of the conversation, the narrative of Star Wars to be in the hands of other people. They don't really control the narrative at all. And they're playing like way behind a lot of what the modern media is. And it's really frustrating as a fan to watch the franchise. And again, like, here's the thing. I don't really want to get negative. And Brittany Laughlin, I see your super chat, and I really appreciate it. We're going to get into Q&A in just a second. Just for the record, Brittany says, don't see JJ retconning Reylo at all. She didn't really say it that aggressively, but I think she meant it that aggressively.
Right.
So my thing is, and I don't like to get super negative, but I mean, who's the president of Lucasfilm? You know what I mean? It's Kathy Kennedy. So, like, for all of the weird politication that we saw when it came to Kathy, and people feel like, oh, well, I need to stand up for Kathy because there's all these really hateful people saying mean things about her. Of course, we stand up against hate, but at the end of the day, the woman is in charge, and a lot of the problems that I think we're all struggling with as Star Wars fans have happened under her watch. I
Mm-hmm.
really, really wish that at the very least she approached the media just way differently. I'm just really not a fan of it. I mean, she didn't say anything after Solo. She didn't make a single actual appearance, say anything. No investor calls, no anything. And I think the first time we saw her speak publicly was at Celebration since Solo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, and not that even
Mm-hmm.
she has to say it, but it's just like, it's not just her, it's everybody. Like, everybody there is just like, squoop, not, there's nothing. There's no communication to us about anything that's going on, So,
Yeah.
um, it becomes a little bit frustrating. But in either case, let's get into Q&A in just a second here, guys. Go ahead, start getting your questions ready. Al and I will be willing to answer rather any questions that come in. If you got a little loot, you want to drop a super chat and it supports the channel, supports us, we will answer every single super chat that comes in. But if you don't have any loot, don't worry about it. Just drop a question in. We'll get to as many questions in the chat as we possibly can. And hopefully, I mean, we'll be able to go for probably like a half hour more here at least. We should be able to get
Oh yeah.
into a lot of it. Georgia Robbie asks, why would JJ get rid of it if he made it a thing in the first place? Al, you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, I think it all has to kind of do with the perceived pressure from the fan base. When you look at Star Wars and how it's been received over the course of this sequel trilogy, and you look at some of the negativity and some of the backlash, um, if they're sitting in a room and kind of trying to decide how they want this to go, I can totally see a scenario where the machine that is Disney Lucasfilm says, you know, forget the story to a degree. It's like, no, we've got to make sure we save this franchise, or we make sure
Yeah.
that we keep this bankroll going. And if the powers that be decide that that is, that trumps JJ telling the best story or giving us the best ending he can, then a lot of us would just be stuck out. But and just to say, let me say, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't hope for that to happen. But if you're asking me if I see a scenario in which it could happen,
Yeah.
then yeah, it definitely could. But I mean, JJ could want to tell one story, but if the suit's telling me he's got to tell a different one, then I think he's gonna roll with that.
Yeah, and just to sort of expand on that a bit, JJ is kind of a suit himself. I mean, he's a producer on all of these films. I believe he probably has back end points. I believe he's probably invested heavily in Lucasfilm and Disney, doing well, him having a good relationship. And so he is kind of a suit. You know what I mean? Like he's old Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
money.
Yeah.
And dude, he's just looking at the numbers. I mean, it's literally a game of numbers. So why would he
Mm-hmm.
change Reylo if he's the one that started it? I mean, it's not that in his mind it's maybe it's not that so much that he's changing Reylo. In his mind, and this is something you and I talked about last night, is that all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
he's like, you know what, it does make more sense for them to be related. That's exactly what George Lucas did. So back in the day, he had Leia and Luke literally make out in the second act of the movie, and then there was a novel that came out that George Lucas corresponded on called Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and that had some steamy Luke and Leia action in it. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
the idea was then he decided retroactively, retconned, retroactive continuity. George decided, no, they're related. Technically, nothing that happened on screen refuted that. There was some sexual tension there that's just they didn't know. And it could be explained
Right.
away the same way with Kylo Ren and Rey. And if you don't think it's possible, I mean, I just want to tell you guys, like, I'm sorry, but it is completely possible. It is completely possible that JJ's like, they are related. That's the way we're going now. Because he's the one telling the story. You know what I mean? Like he's
Mm-hmm.
the one telling the story. And so, as a way to answer your question, that's how. That's why, rather, he would do that. The whole bro and sis thing was just debunked by Pablo Hidalgo. Athena says, "Yeah, technically she can't be the child of Han Solo, but that does not mean that they can't be related. There's a bajillion different ways that they could make them related, including making Rey a clone of Luke Skywalker. That is
Mm-hmm.
that would technically make them related. Um, let's see here." Yes, but not tens of thousands of people wanted this to happen. I'm not sure. I think you guys are having a conversation there. Again, I know there's passionate people on both sides of this. There's plenty of people that really don't want them to have romantic feelings. Do you think that their relationship is completely wasted, JJ353? I mean, it really depends on what happens in the last movie, in my opinion. I don't think either way it's wasted, depending on how it's resolved, right? So the resolution for it, I believe, is Ben sort of being redeemed. I think it was always going to end with self-sacrifice redemption, and it's just like Vader and Luke, except instead of Luke loving his father, it's like, you know, Rey loves this guy, whether it's her brother or someone she loves. She loves him, and he loves her, whether or not that's sisterly love or brotherly love, or rather, you know what I mean, like romantic or not. What do you think about that? Do you think if they change it, do you think it sort of wastes the relationship?
No, I don't think it wasted. I think it's kind of what you said. It depends on how they choose to take it, and how the story ends. Because it's only to me, it's only a waste if it becomes an afterthought, or if it's not resolved, or if we don't, or if it's left up to audience interpretation or something like that,
Yeah.
then it becomes a waste. I mean, then it becomes a question of, okay, so what was all the buildup for if you weren't going to give me a resolution to this connection? And that's where I think it really becomes a question of what is JJ's priority with writing this movie and the script is where was the priority? Was it on resolving the trilogy or was it on restoring the faith in the Star Wars brand? Was it both? Was it true just to cash in and make another big payday? And I think we'll get those answers once we see the movie. But I think no, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a waste. Only if we don't find out that there was some significance to the connection. If there's no significance, then yes, it was a waste. But they don't have to necessarily end up romantically connected in order for that relationship or that connection to pay off for me.
Right. Exactly. I'm feeling it the same way. Um, yeah, I see a lot of a lot of defense. Okay, Crystal, that's a good question. Let's see here. Why do men hate Reylo more than women do? I don't necessarily know of much evidence for this. I will say that there's plenty of men that don't see it. My answer to this would probably be that men, especially when it comes to romantic things, sometimes sometimes things just fly right over their head. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that that could be part of it as well. I do think there's a certain I don't know attitude about the blatant romance of these two sort of going together. You know what's funny is like I see a lot of men that if they're anti Raylo, they'll say things like he's a psycho, he's a murdering psychopath. Like why would you want her to be a part of this relationship thing? I always found that so weird that men would jump to the fact that he's a psycho. You know what I mean? It just feels like that's the wrong answer.
Yeah, it's kind of
If you really don't want romance in Star Wars, that's the wrong answer. Um,
that's the wrong right, exactly. But no, and just to kind of piggyback off of that, I know that I'm in the minority with this statement, but I actually am a fan of Reylo to a degree. I
mhm.
don't ship it as much as like the community does as a whole, but I wouldn't consider myself anti Reylo or not a fan of that connection. I'm a fan when it comes to Star Wars. I'm a fan of anything that drives the narrative forward. If it leads to or if it's going to enrich the story, if it's going to give me a deeper understanding of the lore, then I'm all for it. And when they introduced the idea, or when I first heard of the concept of Raylo and started kind of looking into it myself, that's what intrigued me about it was them kind of telling this balance or the story of the balance of the force through this perceived love affair or potential love affair. And
Right.
so for me, I was all in for that. I was like, this will be interesting to see how it plays out. But if it doesn't turn out that way, or if they take it in a different direction, I'm not gonna storm out of the theater thinking that I was cheated out of my money.
Yeah, definitely not.
I'll still be a fan of the movie if the plot makes sense. But I don't think it's a thing where it's just guys are anti Raylo because they don't want the romance in the relationship. Or in the movie, I should say. I think it's more of a thing where guys are just don't want to see it become um, Twilight, if you will,
Sure,
and
sure.
not saying Twilight in the actual movie itself, but not seeing the fan base turn into just where Star Wars is all about the romance and the love affairs and things like that, because that's taking it away from kind of its essence, I think.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I think that's where some of that pushback comes from.
yeah.
But for me personally, like I said, if they end up together or if we end up getting Raylo all the way, I'm all for it as long as it means that it makes the story that much better.
You know what's funny? I just thought of this too. Uh, so imagine, George said at Celebration, it was not this one, it was the one in Orlando, but he said that the Star Wars is really for kids. And he said like, Disney doesn't like it when he says that, blah blah blah. But really, Star Wars is for kids, and reality is it's for the kids within adults too. Um,
Hmm.
and I imagine this like as literally. So like let's personify the young boy in me. The young boy in me is sitting on the carpet. Okay. And then let's just say that there's the young girl of another female fan. Okay. And
Hmm.
we're both given these you could call them action figures, you could call them dolls, right? But they're these toys. And one is Rey and one is Kylo. Just in my mind, objectively, if you give the young boy the Kylo figure, he wants to go fight with it. The girl might want to do like, kissy face romance stuff. Maybe it's that simple.
Hmm.
Maybe it's that the young boy inside all of these, men that are angry isn't getting the toy that they want, and they feel like the toy given to them is really just for the benefit of like the young female fan.
Yeah.
Is that the most Freudian thing I've ever said?
Yeah, I like it though. I like that.
Yeah, it might be really.
Josh getting deep in the live chat. I like it.
Yeah. All right. So April Rillo is coming in hot with the super fan or super chat. So let's check out this super chat here. Do you think there's any way that Ben Solo could be redeemed and Reylo could happen where people wouldn't turn around and say this is just like Twilight? Of course. Well, okay. So I'll take this one right away. Of course there is. Of course there is. Um, I think there's so many ways that they could do this. So many different ways that they could do it that would be good. I think that the concern on their end is that it almost doesn't matter how they do it; it'll be perceived that way. I think that's I think that's part of it. What do you think? Do you think that it's possible that they do this in a way that is not perceived as corny or twilighty?
Yeah, I can see that. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because I could totally see a way or a scenario in which the prevailing thought coming out of the movie was, what the hell did I just watch? This was like Twilight in space. If they really play hard on that, the dramatics and the connection, um, for example, if we get anything close to Hayden Christensen
Oh
and
God,
Natalie Portman in
yeah,
this movie, and that type of exchange between Ray and Kylo, then I could totally see people kind of going, "WTF, man!
yeah,
Like
yeah.
this is not what I signed up for."
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can't even imagine that. Like they're standing on this busted Death Star, having that Padme and Anakin conversation 2.0. Like I could totally see that being like the moment where people just get up and they're like, I can't do this. But if
Yeah,
unless they do something like that, unless it
right.
go and I don't see JJ doing anything close to that, but it would have to be something like that in order for it to like totally derail the movie. I think for me and for even the hardcore fans, I think people that are giving the most pushback on the Reylo thing, I think when the movie comes out, if it's done in a way that drives the story and we get a satisfying ending, I don't think fans are going to care as much as they do right now.
Sure. No, I can definitely see that, and I see some people in the chat talking about me as a Reylo shipper, and I'll just clarify again, and you should go watch the earlier on in the video where I clarify this. I do not consider myself a Reylo shipper, not anymore. I'd like to believe that just like Yoda with the Wookiees, good relations with the Reylos I have, but I don't really consider myself a Reylo shipper, and I went into that earlier and why I made that decision. So go check that out if you're curious. But let's just get back into some more questions. There's a rumor that Rey is Han Solo's daughter and her mother is not Leia. Yeah, that rumor is false. Cosmic Firestar. That rumor is false. The timeline doesn't make any sense. Han was with Leia literally till about 5 years right up before the Force Awakens. Um, and so, yeah, Rey is not 5 years old at the beginning of the Force Awakens. So there's no way, no way. People said I'm sick. I'm sick. Finrock says, "I'm sad that you aren't a shipper anymore, Josh." Um, don't be sad. Don't be sad. I'm not an anti. You know what I mean? I just think that I can't identify with that word in that community anymore because of certain things that community does, and not everybody in the Reylo community is completely reasonable. Rusty Diller with the $5 super chat. Am I the only one that thinks Rey is still going to the dark side, or maybe Gray Jedi? And why hasn't Rey gotten a staff saber yet? Like, what the fuck? Yo, I could totally agree with a couple of things in there. The staff saber, for sure, that would have been really cool. Rey Darkseid, I mean, I would love for that to happen, but at this point, that's not what you do in the third movie. In the third movie, your character's like pretty well put together. You know what I mean? I guess that's kind of what they did to Anakin, isn't it? What do you think? You think we could get some Rey going dark side, some or gray?
I think I could see a scenario where that's kind of a plot twist within a plot twist is a point where we realize or we find out that, let's say, for example, maybe Rey's a clone of Palpatine or Rey's a clone of Vader or something like that. And we're, she, upon learning that truth, we are kind of teased at the idea of her turning dark, but, she makes the conscious decision to resist the dark and stay on the light side or something like that. I could totally see a scenario. I could totally see them going kind of down that path and kind of giving, because you do see hints of it in certain spots with her during The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, when you kind of go back and watch it, if you're looking for it. But I could see them kind of teasing it or kind of giving us a sampling of it, but I don't see her going, full dark side and her turning into the ultimate overarching villain or something like that. No, I can't see that one.
Yeah, no, I can't. Maybe they could have done that. See, like, okay, if we knew there was more and more Star Wars movies going, see, a lot of these things get kind of pushed off of the table because of outside interference, things that we know that maybe we shouldn't take into consideration, but we have to, right? Like, there's no Star Wars movie for 3 years, and then they're doing 3 movies, and they're definitely not continuing this saga in those 3 movies. It's new something. It's something new. And so if this was not the case, if we didn't have that information, I might say, yeah, they could switch Rey Darkseid in the 3rd movie, and then the next movie, the next series of movies is Ben trying to bring her back or something. You know what I mean? That's possible.
Right.
But because we know that that's not going to happen, it's really hard to say that they'll do something like that in the 3rd movie. Just probably not going to happen, particularly with the idea of Palpatine being reintroduced. That is because they need the big bad. They need the big evil. They need the big evil to overcome. And that would imply that, like, the big good has to prevail. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's being set up in a way that you can pretty much read what's going to happen. And unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of surprises there. It doesn't mean it won't be enjoyable. It doesn't mean it won't be good.
Right. And I think we touched on that point yesterday too, but because I my best hope for episode 9 is that episode 9 becomes, by the time we get to episode 9, that it's at in-game status, and not from a hype perspective, not at all from a hype perspective, but what I mean by that is where by the time we sit down in the theater, we have a pretty good idea of where this movie's going to go. We just have no idea how we're going to get there.
Right.
And episode 9 becomes a story where it's like, holy crap, we saw, like, I knew this was the way this was going to go, but I had no idea they were going to do that.
I mean, think about this, dude. The freaking prequels, you know the end. You know that Vader, he's going to turn into Vader. You know that's Palpatine.
Right.
Did it ruin no, it didn't ruin anything. You know what I mean? So that's the same. That's the same thing with, like, when I get frustrated when people are like, "Yeah, Ben will be redeemed. Rey's gonna defeat evil." It's kind of boring. It's like, yeah, no shit. But that doesn't mean it's not entertaining. Like, the way that you get there, you get there.
It's like the whole point. It's like,
yeah, dude.
Have you ever picked up a comic book?
Yeah, dude,
generally.
Like, did you ever read a book and say, you know what? I bet the good guy's gonna win, and then slam the book down.
Right.
I'm done with this. I'm done with this.
Let's be real about it.
Yeah. Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah,
Anyways,
it's
guys,
like
we're still in Q&A, by the way. I just want to let you know, keep on letting those questions roll in. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Al.
oh no, you're good, man. I was just gonna say, smash that like button, people.
Yeah, smash that like button. Dude, YouTube is so weird now. Apparently the like button thing is like a real big deal all of a sudden. So now I have to like really make it a point to talk about that on the shows and different things like that. So
Gotta love the good old YouTubes.
yeah, you gotta love the YouTubes. I mean, there's a lot of conversation in the
Yeah, it's
in
moving.
there. Let's see here, Josh. The video called. Do you explain why airship anymore? It's this video, Finn O'Rocks. It's this video. Earlier in this video, I explained sort of what happened with me. There's parts of it that I still haven't explained. Like for instance, I did a video. Honestly, there's a lot that I'm actually not going to talk about when it comes to Reylo. Just straight up, I'm not going to talk about it. It's not a smart thing to do. But I'll say this: you can extrapolate what you will about my feelings about the community from this example. I did a video, an exclusive video. I had a partnership with Amino back in the day, and I was doing videos exclusive to that app, theory videos, most of them Reylo based. And I did a video talking about the Force Child, the theory that Rey and Kylo Ren had conceived a child when they did their hand touching scene in The Last Jedi. And the Reylo community itself turned against me and freaked out and said some stuff that I just couldn't believe. I couldn't believe these people were saying this stuff to me. And I was like, this community is made up of some passionate people that maybe aren't that awesome. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Let's see here. Carrie Langley says, "What do you think of this of the flash fights between Rey and Kylo Ren? What does that mean? Flash fights? And just saying in the chat, I'm completely neutral. I am neutral on it. I don't understand this super chat. Do you? Flash fights?
No, hold on. Let me take a look.
It just says, "What do you think of the flash fights?" And it says, "By the way, Rey and huh?
Yeah, I don't know.
Noel
Flash
Evans
fights.
says, "So do you like the people who ship it, but you like the concept?" So here's the thing: I like the tension. I like the idea of them having a romantic feelings for each other, and the reason I like that is because they're enemies. You shouldn't be sexually attracted or want to be with or have romantic feelings for your enemy. And then there's a little bit of like Stockholm syndrome that's going on in those scenes. And there's this weird connection that's forged to them because they're both really lonely people. And I like that. And I like how Rey started to believe in the better side of Kylo. I like it. And then I like how he disappointed her. And he's still just power hungry. And I like the tension and the attraction that they have. But I don't see it as like this thing that has to happen that is a movement. That's this thing that you should defend and want to. That's like my my explanation for it. Okay, let's see here.
Yeah,
There's a leak about flash fights where Kylo Ren fight. It takes them to different points in the Skywalker saga. That sounds really interesting. Did you hear about that? So apparently there's this idea that so there's this idea that they will have fights. They'll be able to like sort of actually fight through their maybe Force Skypes, and then maybe they'll go around through different periods in the Skywalker history fighting through them. What do you think about that?
That sounds dope.
Yeah, that would
like
be cool.
I would, depending on how they put that together, that would be an awesome visual. I think like to see them kind of take their fight, and I can just kind of picture them, like part of the fight taking place on Mustafar,
Right.
or something like that, or maybe echoing or mimicking kind of them on the Death Star, or something like that, and maybe we could have possibly gotten hints of that in Rey's Forceback visions from the Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Maybe that that's a possibility,
because it
but
did look like he was
likely.
He was like coming at her.
Yeah, because it looked like right, and then and not only that, but kind of just the scenes of them. The way that they were setting up the scenes with them in the in the rain and things like that, and then what we're seeing now with some of the artwork, it definitely looks like they're kind of tying that together. And then with her having these force back visions and of these moments, or seeing these areas that she had, that were connected to the lightsaber, but not necessarily connected to her memory, so to speak,
Right.
but just receiving those visuals through the force. I could totally see that, see that on screen, and being awesome. But they'd have to work it into a way that made sense, though.
Yeah, they
Just
would. They
kind of
would.
throwing that in there as a cool thing to show, I don't think we want to, or I don't think I want to see that unless there's this distinct reason and purpose for it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Super chat coming in from Jess H. Thanks for the content, Josh. Thank you for the support and all the love. Man, that would be cool. It sounds like a pretty crazy idea. I'm seeing in chat people think that maybe it came from making Star Wars, maybe it came from Mike Zero. It's kind of like a fringe level sort of
Yeah.
a weirder idea. Now, visually, I think that one of the things I'll extrapolate off that question a little bit here, because I think that one of the benefits of having Rey in this trilogy is this ability she has, the force back vision. And so I would really like it if maybe she's using that ability, perhaps honed it a little bit, and she uses it maybe on the second Death Star to gain access to some old memories, or she uses, maybe something of C-3PO's to access some old memories of something. I would like that as a way to explain a lot of stuff that came before us in the Skywalker saga. I think that would be really cool. Now, I don't necessarily need Kylo Ren to be like following her through that and like fighting. That would add a pretty crazy visual aspect to the film. But I gotta be honest, there's a part of me, there's like this knee-jerk part of me that's like, dude, I'm sick of fights that aren't actually fights. Can we have an actual fight? You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking of the Last Jedi Luke thing, you know what I mean? Like the force projection,
Mm-hmm.
which was dope. But like I just don't want to have another
Yeah.
big fight that's
No,
not a
that
fight, you know?
right, and that's what I think. Disney Lucasfilm, if they're going to have that kind of action in the Rise of Skywalker, that's what we need to see. That's what the trailers need to show. Or that's what kind of artwork or screenshots you want to give people. Is you want to give people the impression, or let people know right off the bat, that the scale on this movie is going to be ridiculous, and
Right.
that we are going to have action, and we're going to have lightsabers, and this is going to be a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Like that's what we should be seeing, or that's what I would figure that the marketing team want to put out there is, hey, this movie, you about to see some stuff.
Yeah,
It's gonna
definitely.
get serious.
Definitely. I'm very excited to see. Maybe this is something we can sort of spin into a different topic, but I think one of the things I really want them to do, and I'm going to be so frustrated if they try to hide the Matt Smith Palpatine thing from us the entire time. Like, I would love if they just put it out there as he's this dark acolyte. You know what I mean? I feel like they should say that Palpatine. They should just come right out and say that Palpatine like wants that his spirit is alive and wants to be resurrected. And then the question
Mm-hmm.
could become like, what if they went out and started leaking stuff about how he enters this person or enters this person, or there's clone bodies? Like, I just think that if they had some cool ways to take what is obvious and make us speculate even further about it, it would be much better
Mm-hmm.
than what they're doing right now.
Agreed, because you put that, it almost makes it, if you don't get any, or if we don't get any additional context behind this idea of Palpatine possibly returning in episode 9, then it truly will make his appearance, Ian McDermott's appearance at Star Wars Celebration, and them dropping him into the end of that trailer, regardless of how much he's involved in the movie, regardless of how much of him we actually see. If we don't get any additional context before episode 9, then it truly looks like that was just like a fan service move
Yeah.
to kind of drum up attention and hype for the movie.
Yeah.
Because you've got to give, some kind of context, or give some kind of indication. Because if not, then the speculation is just completely, at that point, is just completely wild. Like you're there, it's not even focused, and that's kind of what I think lended itself, or what made Endgame so awesome, was the fact that yeah, everybody was speculating, and the speculation was going all over the place, but everyone still kind of had that same central idea of where that movie was going to go and how that movie was going to have to end up in order for there to be a real resolution.
Yeah.
With Star Wars, if we don't get any additional information regarding like Palpatine and this idea that he could be coming back, then yeah, it just looks like it's total fan service, and it almost kind of does a disservice to the movie, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, this is probably going to be the first of many conversations that we're going to have about these similar topics and the similar, goings and happenings when it comes to Rise of Skywalker. It's going to be a very interesting next couple of months. I'm really curious to see what Disney's plan is. How are they approaching this? And I'm really curious to see like how the internet is responding. You know what I mean? How first of all, how far ahead
Mm-hmm.
are the leaks going to be? How far ahead is all that info going to be? And also, how are people engaged with this? I mean, I expect the movie to
Yeah,
do very
definitely.
well. I expect the movie to make a lot of money and to do very well. Can you imagine though if it doesn't? I mean, can you imagine a scenario here where I almost think it's guaranteed to have a pretty massive opening weekend, but then it could potentially drop off pretty quick. And if it doesn't have the repeat viewers or the legs, I mean, what if it makes even less than the Last Jedi? Would you consider that a failure?
I would consider that a failure, just from the standpoint that you can't have the last movie in the Skywalker saga do worse than the arguably the most controversial Star Wars movie ever made.
Yeah,
You just can't. Like, even though that's hindsight is 2020, and a lot of that buzz and a lot of the success from the Last Jedi was before word of mouth kind of got out and people started back giving their
yeah,
opinion on the movie and things like that. Um, Even still, just the optics of that, because that people will run to that, and that will be a huge headline. Is epic Star Wars conclusion does worse than worst movie, or some, or all kind of crazy headlines.
I
So
mean, I almost feel like,
that yeah.
dude, I almost feel like that is why they're using all of this leverage. That they realize that they need it to do more. They need it to do better than the Last Jedi to prove to investors and to turn around the narrative that the Star Wars
Hmm.
brand is still really really strong. Because
Right, I
the
agree.
reality of the situation is it's in a really rocky place, and it's man, like I mean, kudos to them. I think the Emperor was a great move. I think the Emperor was a great move. I think that first trailer is incredible. I'm very excited. You know what I mean? Like I remain
Yeah, same here. Oh, definitely.
incredibly optimistic and super pumped about it. But it's not me that they
Oh
have to
yeah.
convince, bro. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I'm not
It's
the
the
person.
casuals. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the casual fans. It's the people that aren't really that bought into it because the reality of the situation is like look, I make the content, I look at the data, I really spend a lot of time on this stuff, guys. And I'm telling you right now, the conversation about Star Wars, the one that people want to watch, the one that people want to talk about, the stuff that's really popping for Star Wars has a negative light. It has a negative light. Like
Hmm.
it's very DCEU esque in the way that it performs online. Like I just don't know how else to say it. It's a tough situation that the brand is in. But that's gonna do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you, Reylos. I hope we can still be friends. I think good relations I have with the Reylos. I think is that should be okay. Thank you guys seriously for the support. The thing about the Den is, I've always wanted this channel and this company and this community to be able to have all sorts of different beliefs and opinions about things. I think one of the most fun things about fandom is that we can disagree and have discussions, passionate discussions at times about the way we see our fictional characters and our fictional plots and all of these things. You know what I mean? So I would never try to poo poo on the way that someone else enjoys their fandom, and I think that that's a good principle, and I would hope that the most hardcore among us, the people that really love this channel and the content that we produce, would also believe in that. Not that you can't strongly voice your opinions about the way you feel, but you should never intentionally do stuff to drag someone else's enjoyment down. You know what I mean? So I would never do that. Al, you got anything for the lovely people before we head on out of here?
Just thanks for stopping through. It's been a blast. Can't wait to do this again. And make sure you hit that like button, people.
Make sure you hit that like button. Oh man, I'm gonna be drilling you guys on the like button. You're gonna get sick of me saying a like button. Your fingers are gonna be sore by the time I'm done with you this week. That sounded a little gross. Let's keep it professional. So as I always say, guys, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.